Welcome back to the Film Grinders podcast. I'm your host, Nicolas Hauka, with David Hollinshead. Dave, how are you doing, man?
Doing fantastic. I'm in the middle of week 2 of my show, and I'm definitely feeling the wear and tear, but I'm excited to do this. I'm glad it's another you episode, that's for sure.
Well, we thank you for coming on despite being in the middle of your acting career. Such a multifaceted, talented man you are.
Maybe one day you'll say that without rolling your eyes to the back of your head.
Hey, you can coach football, you can act, and you can podcast. It's more than a lot of people can say.
Nobody puts Dave in a corner. No one puts me in a box.
Jack of all trades, master of none type guy. Yeah. I know, I'm kind of the same way too. It's all right. So, Dave, today we're going to talk about edge rushers. This class is really interesting. I think there are 2, you could argue maybe 3, kind of can't miss guys. And then after that, this is a big upside draft. I think a lot of scouts and analysts look at players, look at their frames, their wingspan, and then they kind of project a guy to be better. There's not a lot of guys that had a ton of production. There's a couple guys on my top 10 here who had great production, but maybe you look at the physical attributes and you go, I don't know if it's going to translate that well at the next level. So we'll talk about that, but kind of a different edge class. I don't think it's that strong this year. What do you think about it?
I think with this edge class, and I think this can be said for most of the draft, is yes, it lacks in like the high upside kind of top tier talent, but it's very good for scheme fits. So it's a little less about the high end talent and a little more about flavor. Like if you're looking for a 3-4 kind of end, you can find that. You're looking for a short speed rusher off the edge, you can probably find that to fit your scheme. So no, it doesn't have the top end talent, but no matter where, if you're looking for an edge rusher, no matter what your scheme may be, no matter what you're looking for, you're probably going to find it in the mid to late rounds.
Yeah, let's get into it right off the bat. So we're not going to go to number 10 first because Dave had some gripes about my top 10 list. There's some guys missing off of this list that we're going to talk about right away. So Dave, who's the first guy that pissed you off the most that's not on this list?
I mean, I just don't understand. Why do you not like disruption in the backfield? Why does that upset you? Do you not like that? Why do you not have Jack Sawyer on this list? I love Jack Sawyer. If the Patriots had a little more roster flexibility at the top of the second round, I would be pounding the table and running that card up for them, for the Mike Vrabel clone.
Yeah, so my thing with him is I think the type of rusher he is, I think the game has kind of passed that by on the edge.
They're timeless, Nick.
I don't think he's a great athlete. I think he's a pretty slow player. He isn't exactly exploding out of his stance. He's very technically sound. He knows how to rush the passer. What I think with him is I think he'll be a productive pro. I think he needs to put on 10 to 15 pounds, and I think he needs to move inside to 3 technique and be a pass rusher inside on passing downs. And I think he can do that. If you watch him play, super strong against the run, has a good reach that he uses. He knows how to use his leverage, and he's really strong. I think that's where he needs to be. I don't think I know this is an overused term, but I'll use it in this instance. I don't think he's twitchy enough for the edge in today's game. I just really don't. I don't think he is going to be overpowering tackles like he did in college. In the pro game, I think he's going to be better moving inside, because for the inside, if he can kind of keep the speed he has now, I think he's going to be able to use his speed and his rush set against guards that are typically worse at pass blocking than tackles. And I think that's a good fit for him. I don't think he's a fit outside in the league. I just don't.
I guess we should have let off with this a little bit, but then that makes me ask, what do you look for in your edge rushers?
They know how to rush the passer, but also have a little bit of physical upside that they can be effective off the edge. And I think there's a certain hip flexibility that you look for, that you can turn the corner at certain angles, and it gets better and better as you get up this list. But there are things that I think you need to be a productive edge rusher. I don't think this is a game anymore where you can just overpower tackles to get into the backfields with how mobile quarterbacks are now.
Especially with QBs being as dynamic as they are, like we're obviously trending away from the pocket passers. We're not quite at the just pure athletes back there, but we're certainly seeing the trend towards athleticism. If you're getting bull rushed, like you're still engaged with your tackle, right? So it still makes it very easy for QBs to kind of step up and dipsy doodle bail the way out, or even just dip around you, right? So I guess that makes sense if you're looking at like a power rusher like him.
Yeah, 100%. Like the classic Russell Wilson spin out uh, to your blind side, right? Like that's pretty easy to do against those types of rushers. And when it's awesome when rushers have that physical ability, but they also have the speed to catch you. I don't think Sawyer is that guy. And Landon Jackson is another guy who is not on my list that is on a lot of people's lists. I think those two will be good players. I just think they're going to have to play on the inside. I see Landon Jackson. I think the ceiling for him inside is maybe like a Calais Campbell. I know he's not quite as strong, obviously, but I think that's kind of the profile there. Both guys are, I believe, Campbell 6'8", but Landon Jackson's 7, really big wingspan that he can use inside. I just don't think he's a good enough athlete on the edge in today's game. So those two are off the list, but again, should be productive inside if they can put a little bit of weight on and up their strength a little bit as they get a little bit older. So let's get started now, Dave. Number 10 for me, from Old Miss, Princely Umanmielen. Probably butchered that. I'm sorry, Princely. 6'4", 255 pounds. This guy, to me, this is a pure finesse edge rusher. This is your third down guy. I don't think he gives you a lot of value on early downs against the run. I think he gets washed quite often, and I don't think he is overly engaged in that aspect of the game. This is a guy that you throw in on third down to get after quarterbacks, and he does a really good job with his finesse rushes doing so.
Yeah, I'd agree. I really like his measurables, 6'4", 260-ish. I really like his length. I like the way he uses his long arms, but as you said, he's purely a pass rusher. He he doesn't have, I know we kind of said this about Jack Sawyer, he doesn't really have the quickness and twitch though that you're looking for. He kind of lacks the physicality and that pin your ears back kind of disruption, and he just kind of struggles to get low. And if you have a guard or a tackle who gets low on him, he just gets taken for a ride. So definitely a third down only player. I like what he can contribute on those passing downs, but beyond that, I'm not really seeing much more value out of that.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of like a Kayvon Thibodeau light. Thibodeau has had to work on his game quite a bit at the pro level because he can't just. I think when you're in college, tackles aren't quite fully developed yet in pass pro, and Thibodeau really took advantage of that. And obviously, Thibodeau is a better athlete than Princely, but Princely really took advantage of his long arms and tackles, undersetting quite a bit of the time and sometimes oversetting, and he would take advantage of that. Tackles are so much more disciplined and technically sound at the next level. He will really need to work on his rush, but I do think there's something there as a pass rusher on obvious passing downs. Again, like I really struggled to see him playing on early downs. He has a long wingspan though, so maybe if he really hones into that aspect further down the line, he can get there, but he's not going to be ready to do that for quite a while, in my opinion. So that's why I have him at 10. Still some value there. I think he's a mid-round pick. And again, he's a heavy upside guy, right? Because he does have the measurables, but I don't know if it's there yet. Won't spend too much time on these guys near the bottom of the list. 9 from Ohio State, JT Tuimoloau, 6'5", 269 pounds. He is such a weird watch on film. If you just watch the highlight tape, you go, "Oh, this guy's a stud." Then you watch film, and you'll see those plays and go, "Wow, there's something there." And then you see a lot of him doing weird things, like he on rundowns on like first and tens will like rush 6 yards up the field, explode off the ball, create massive creases in the run game. When taking on blocks, his feet are really narrow at times, and which makes him just get washed. He gets reached. He just looks terrible against the run. Then he'll have weird splash plays where you go, "Holy, like this guy is it, that's a great play. Where did this come from?" He's just such a weird watch. There's a lot of tools there, and I think you'll hear a lot of people say this year's film was not as good as the year prior, which I would agree with I would agree with that, honestly, just flat out. Just kind of an interesting player. The thing with him is I do think he has the physical upside to be, at worst, a solid pass rusher. on passing downs, kind of like Princely as well. He's a way better athlete than his teammate Jack Sawyer, but he's not as strong, right? So you kind of some give and take there, but I do think he's better suited for the edge. And I think if he can kind of figure those things out and be more consistent, I think there might be something there with him. I just struggled to see it on a consistent basis right now.
Yeah, I kind of like his hands game. When a defensive end can make plays on screens and quick passes like that, especially with this kind of RPO trending league that we have, being able to do that is definitely a huge plus. I mean, the fact that a defensive end can get interceptions is pretty sick. But like you kind of said, he's a hand down only. I feel like D lineman, you don't really see him play in a 2-point.
Yeah.
And even though he's stuck in that 3-point, you still see him stand up a lot. And then you just see him get kind of washed out. And any double teams or combo blocks or even some sort of trap, he just gets pushed right out of the play. I'm not super high on him, and I'm kind of upset that your number 9 is Jack Sawyer.
Yeah.
I'm not super high on him. I think these are things that can get coached out, but these are just such basic things of like keeping low and not standing up. These are things that we dealt with at the high school level. So the fact that that's not coached into him already is a big red flag for me. I would probably stay away from him. He reminds me a bit of Jermaine Cunningham out of Florida, where he was just kind of the big, lankier guy who made some ish plays in Florida, but he was playing across from Carlos Dunlap, which would be the Jack Sawyer in this case, where he kind of was able to benefit off of a guy who was better on the other side of the line of scrimmage from him.
Yeah, I think against the run, I see a lot of issues with him. And as you were saying, like high school problems, right? Like on early downs. Why are you exploding up the field when tackles are run setting on you? Like, I don't understand where that's coming from. You're an experienced football player at this point. Like, there needs to be better instincts there. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But I see a lot of things against the pass where he's a lot more explosive than Sawyer. He has better hips. I think his hand usage is pretty similar to Sawyer's, and he sets up his rushes pretty well for the most part. And I just think he's a better athlete. I think he's just better suited for the edge than Sawyer is. I think Sawyer will ultimately be the better player. I just think it's going to be on the inside. That's just
agree to disagree.
Well, we can't agree on everything, Dave. That's fine. But yeah, like here's a guy that I think you take a flyer on round 4 or 5. I wouldn't take him any higher than that. And maybe he can give you some value as a depth rusher. Like that's kind of where I see him. I don't really see his ceiling being that high, to be completely honest with you. But I do think with the league being a passing league, you can never have enough pass rushers, right? So this is a decent depth piece. And I think if he can hone in those things on the run, I think this can be an effective backup for you down the line.
Sure.
Yeah. Number 8. Here's a guy that at number 8, if you gave this guy the frame of the first 2, I think this guy's going in the top 10. Unfortunately, he does not have the same frame. From Michigan, Josaiah Stewart, 6'1", 245. I find with pass rushers, right off the bat, there's just a natural instinct there, and you see it from the high school level. You can teach guys how to get better at it, but the best guys just have it from the get-go, and then you need to hone in their skills. I think Josaiah Stewart is that guy. He just knows how to rush the passer. He knows how to take angles on tackles. And this is a guy that's standing at 6'1", and he's beating tackles in college football that are way stronger than him, way bigger. He just knows how to get on the edges of them. He has great hip flexibility turning the corner because he is smaller, for that matter. And this guy is an excellent first step. He explodes into the backfield, good hand usage. I think he is a guy that really wins because of that first step. And the reason I have him at 8 here is obviously the size is a red flag. I don't know how that's going to fly as a 3-down player in the NFL, right? And also, he wins on that first step, and we'll find a guy that's pretty high on people's boards pretty quickly here, who I have pretty low, because that's kind of his one thing that he does, and that's Joe Stewart's game as well. The thing with Joe Stewart is he does provide you additional value kind of as your Sam backer in base personnel, where he can play over a slot and do an okay job in zone coverage and defend the run that way because he's a great athlete. So he does have additional value there, which is very important in today's game. So that's why I have him there at number 8.
Yeah, this is another guy that I probably wouldn't touch, but that's just me. I'm not a huge fan of these guys that are just only pass rush, and that's not completely fair to him. Like we did see him drop back in coverage in Michigan as well, so
Yep.
that is a little bit of added, a little added flavor, a little seasoning. But I'm not a huge fan of the guys who clock in at like 6'1", 230 ish. I think you said he was about 240, 245.
Yeah.
We'll see if he stays at that weight. I agree. He just wins at the college level. He was obviously very productive at Michigan, um, but I did find that he's very good with his hands, but he didn't have the greatest of hand accuracy when doing his kind of cross chop moves. And when an offensive lineman gets into his chest, he's dead for the play. Like that's it. He's done.
I'd agree.
And those aren't guys that I typically love. I love that he comes in hot and he pins his ears back and it's like, yo, I'm getting the QB. But we also saw times where he came in a little too hot and QBs were able to step up and escape him and lose contain and lose the QB in the backfield, which can end up causing big plays, especially with the more athletic star QBs we're seeing at the NFL level. I'm not too high on him. He has a lot of worries for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you talked about a little bit about a lot of these guys being kind of scheme specific fits.
Yeah.
I really think Joe Stewart is that guy in a lot of different defenses. If you're going to do the thing like in the Fangio system, the teams that like to run that penny front, which is essentially a bare front, but with a nickel defender in. So you have your three bigger defensive linemen, you have the head up nose, the two defensive tackles outside of the guard, and then you have your two guys on the edge. I think Joe Stewart is one of those edges who has the capability to be a pass rusher, also drop into coverage and do a very adequate to above adequate job, and is able to get after the passer a little bit. I think he really suits that system well, and I think he is a versatile chess piece. I don't think he's a high round pick. Don't get me wrong. This guy's another mid round pick. I think he fits a niche of hybrid defender that the league looks for in certain systems. So I do think he has value in that sense. So I think he reminds me of Clay Matthews the way he rushes the passer. He's 2 inches shorter than Clay Matthews, 10 pounds lighter, and I don't think his wingspan is nearly as big as Matthews was. But you saw Matthews play in that 3-4 system at Green Bay and be very successful. Also play as a Mac backer later in his career on rundowns. And I think Joe Stewart can be that guy and bring value for you in that way. Probably not to the same degree as Clay Matthews, but he could be a light version of that. And I think he provides versatility in today's game that is needed. And that's why I have him at number 8. I like what I see there. Do I think he's going to be a star? No, I don't. But I think he'll be a good versatile piece for you.
Yeah, as you said, his wingspan, he clocked in the 24th percentile. Not great. And if Clay Matthews is the ceiling, let's say, then I definitely think that another Michigan guy, Josh Uche's the floor, and that just really, it scares me.
Yep. That is true. Worst case scenario, good third down rusher, which teams need. Moving on to number 7. Number 7, I had this guy a lot higher on my top 5 earlier after watching other people's film and diving more into his. I have him quite a bit lower. He's kind of falling on draft boards a little bit right now. We have from Texas A&M, Nick Scourton. Scourton is 6'4", 285 pounds. If you want to talk about someone who's technically unsound, that is Scourton against the run. The way this guy engages with blockers is so weird. Like he literally, so when you're engaging with blockers, your feet need to be at least shoulder width apart. You need to sink your hips. You need to engage, lock out your arms, thumbs up, right? This guy has his feet like in a sprinter stance as he's taking on tackles. And I just don't understand it. This is an experienced starter who's been playing the position for a while. I just don't get the fundamentals there, which makes me think potentially, is this guy coachable? That's what I think there. You're playing for Texas A&M and you're a starter and you're a pretty damn good starter too. You have pretty good production and you're playing like this. That just makes me think some certain things about him. And again, I'm not in the building. I have no idea. Right. But that is a concern for me. As a pass rusher, I do like what I see there. he is a natural pass rusher. He knows a lot of the time when he is too far upfield. He retraces. He reminds me a lot of Melvin Ingram. It doesn't look pretty at times, but he just finds the way to get there and affect the quarterback, right? That's what it reminds me of. He also rocks the no gloves, which maybe is why my mind goes there with him. But just the way he's not a super athlete, he's solid. He has decent hip flexibility, which is more than good enough at the pro level, but not elite. Um, there is something there with him, and I feel like if he can hone in those things, I think he'll be a really solid player. I don't think the ceiling is super high, but I definitely think it is better than all of the guys we previously mentioned.
I'd agree. I think that the floor is higher than the ceiling on him. You can put him in, and you're not going to lose too much, but you're also probably not going to gain too much. I wonder about Texas A&M in their D-line because of also having Shemar Stewart on the other side, and he being an athletic freak who was just asked to contain the tackles, and then you have this guy in a sprinter's stance. So I'm wondering, again, we're not in the room. We don't know what they're asking them to do, all that much. But I wonder, there's just something weird between the two of them that has question marks coming up. He doesn't have great leverage, I feel. He's in the 30th percentile for arm length. He doesn't have a lot of great leverage, but he has a good size strength combo, and he's able to use his hands, I think, pretty well. I feel like he's not super great as a pass rusher. We were talking about guys moving to the inside and being more productive there. I think he's a candidate for that if he can put on some more weight.
So I think he is a good pass rusher. I think he's just really inconsistent with his technique. There's times where like he has good rush moves. He does a good job using his hands, and he has a really nice spin move, which is very Melvin Ingram-esque too, actually. And I think he sets it up well. It's just too inconsistent. I don't know if it's like what A&M is asking those two to do, because you saw it with Shemar as well, right? Which we'll talk about later, where I don't know what they're asking them to do, because they're not really exploding off the ball. It's just I don't know, just a weird situation. I'd love to be in the room and like actually know. I also think against the run, the weird thing is despite the lack of technique, he's strong and he doesn't get like absolutely overpowered despite engaging with blocks in a sprinter stance. He'll get washed sometimes for sure, but he doesn't get blown off the ball like a JT Tuimoloau or a Joe Stewart, right? Or Princely for that matter. He holds his ground. He'll get washed enough where there's a lay in there, but he's not getting absolutely destroyed, right? So he is strong. He just needs to hone into those techniques. And that's why he's such a frustrating watch, because I look at this guy and I go, there is something there, but you need to figure your stuff out, man. Like, you're better than this. I can tell you are. And there's just a lot of questions there. Again, like Melvin Ingram's my comp for him. I think he can figure it out. I think he needs to just hone in on those things. I'm surprised he hasn't already. I think he has a great feel for rushing the passer, and I think there's something there. I'm not betting a first round pick on this guy figuring it out, right? I think this is a really good day 2 pick.
And the thing is, though, that we're seeing him being mocked in kind of the late first round, early second round.
It's too high.
I'd agree. Your top 3 guys are guys that I'm not super high on. You don't sound like you're completely sold on them either, so it's not like we're too far off, obviously, because we're still in the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that I think you need good coaching, and we need to get in that A&M room, because I'm just as confused as you are about what they're asking these guys to do.
Yeah, so let's see what happens with him. I think in the right situation, this guy can be a very producive edge rusher that's in the league for years, just like Ingram was. Number 6, from Georgia, Mykel Williams. So little lower for me. I think this guy is a big upside guy. 6'5", 265. He's turning 21, so he's quite young. He played hurt all year for Georgia, and he was still really productive. He reminds me a little bit of Leonard Floyd in the sense that it doesn't really look pretty, but he finds a way to get it done. He has those really long arms that he uses to bat tackles away and affect the passer. This is kind of the Trayvon Walker deal, where in Georgia's scheme, he was asked to play inside tackles a lot in 2-gap. It was very rare that he got to be outside. and truly get after the passer. So there's not a ton of film of him doing that. When you watch what he was doing as he was injured, there's a lot to like there. I don't think he's super explosive. He's more of your kind of next generation power rusher where he's a good athlete, but he's not that upper echelon of explosive rusher. But he's good enough to play on the edge. I think he has good enough hip flexibility. He's not incredible at turning in the corner. This is a guy that needs to win with power, and I think he can do that at the next level. I really think this is a ceiling guy. This could be a guy that ends up being one of the best edge rushers in this class. This is a projection guy, 100% in my opinion.
Yeah, to me, he kind of feels like the cilantro of pass rushers or edge rushers of this class. Some people absolutely love him. Some people absolutely hate him.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a lot to do with the consistency of it. He does line up as a 4-eye technique, as you said, inside the tackle, kind of more inside the tackle. And you did see him line up as a outside linebacker sometimes, kind of also what Trayvon Walker did. George, he's basically just the Trayvon Walker replacement, right? And the Georgia defense. He has a lot of things that are impressive. He has impressive strength, I feel, but I mean that's not super shocking given his size. But I also don't mind his movement skills either. I think it's pretty impressive for his size too. He can move, he's athletic, but there's a lot to develop there. And I think we could see kind of the same career trajectory as Trayvon Walker comes in. Maybe his first year, maybe his second year is a little iffy, but then once, and as you said, he's young. Once he starts to put all of the puzzle pieces together, I think he could be pretty disruptive and a full-time starter in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the path for him. Like, this isn't going to be a guy that's incredible in year one, right? It's going to take time like it did with Trayvon. This is going to be a guy, though, like Trayvon was this in year one for Jacksonville. This is a guy that's going to be unblockable against the run, right? Like, one-on-one against tight ends, that's going to be a no-go. You're not blocking this guy. One-on-one against tackles in the run game, he's going to hold his own. You're not going to be able to reach this guy if he plays with proper technique. So he will bring you value there. And I do think this guy is worth a late first round pick. I really do. Just because I think this guy could be a star. It really depends on how much you value them. I don't think he's quite the player Trayvon is, to be honest with you. I think he's a little bit of a step below, but I just be like, with the measurables, and there's enough on film to tell me this guy could turn into a really good player. So I think taking a late first round chance on this guy could really pay you dividends in the future.
Yeah, I think we're lockstep with that. We're seeing him on a lot of mock drafts kind of in that mid first round, but I think people are falling in love with him just because of the upside, the potential, and the measurables that are all there.
Yeah, and I think with this draft, how it is, like once you get to pick 15 to pick like 50, right? There's not that much of a difference in prospects compared to most years. So this is really going to be who do you like the most? Who do you project is going to be the best? So you could see him go anywhere there, I think. So yeah, I think he could be a productive player moving forward. Let's go on now to number 5. Now this is a little bit different, this guy. Number 5 for me is the natural, the man who was born to rush the passer that is perhaps not the greatest athlete in the world. He's a good enough NFL athlete, but he's not plus in any way. But man, this guy's rush plan, the way he attacks tackles, is really second to none in this class. Donovan Ezeiruaku, who is climbing up boards left and right. I'm seeing him getting picked pretty early in the first round. Like I was seeing him 15 to 20 in a lot of guys' mocks, which is pretty crazy considering this guy was kind of heralded as a second round pick just a month and a half ago. I love Ezeiruaku's game as a pass rusher. I compared him to Yannick Ngakoue. I think they both have super cool names, kind of.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I fall in love with
Ezeiruaku
because their name too. I look for ways to justify it.
That's just a great name. Ezeiruaku with the sack. Like, that just sounds great, you know? Yeah. But also the way they rush the passer, right? Both undersized guys who excel in using their hands while they're rushing the passer and setting up their moves. Like I said in my article, this guy's a fun watch, right? His arm over move is filthy. His chop snatch move is no joke either, right? Like, this guy makes tackles, especially at the college level, just grasp for air. The way he sets up his moves always keeps them guessing. With a lot of these guys before him on this list, they don't have a definite rush plan. They're kind of one-trick ponies. This guy has a plethora of moves already. So in that sense, he's pretty far ahead of these guys. The problem with him is I don't think he's a plus athlete. I think he's just good enough, just like Ngakwe, right? I don't think on rundowns, he has a great motor. You see him chase plays down from the backside. But for a somewhat undersized edge defender, right? Because Ezeiruaku is only 6'2", 247. He has a lot longer wingspan than the Josaiah Stewarts of the world, which will make him be capable of maybe being a 3-down player. He's not super strong. He doesn't have elite hip flexibility, which when you see him kind of turn the corner and chase down plays from the backside, it doesn't look the same as your elite guys that are coming up here, right? So that is going to hold him back. But this is a guy who is ready day one for you. If this guy gets picked in the back half of the first round by a true contender, he is going to come in and he's going to help you in pass rush situations from day one. He's going to be ready to go. I just don't know how high the ceiling is with him.
Yep, I think we're completely locked up. Again, I think I kind of turned you on to him, if I remember correctly. I've been on this guy since months ago. I agree. He is ready to go in the NFL. He has all the moves. He has all the pitches kind of in his arsenal. He's ready to be an NFL edge rusher. But you're right. The fact that he's undersized, the fact that he kind of lacks the size, lacks the strength, lacks the explosiveness, the athletic ability, kind of tumbles him down the boards. I kind of comped him to Harold Landry. Just kind of the more undersized speed rusher, can kind of play with his hand up or hand and a 2-point or his hand in the dirt. Doesn't really matter. He's just productive and he gets after the pass rusher. As we were kind of talking about with the wingspan, he's in the 80th percentile, so that's nothing to just stick your nose up at, right?
Yeah.
Especially with his size. I think he's a guy that just gets it done, and I'm glad that we're kind of seeing him rise up draft boards because I am quite high on him. And he can go sack QBs right away, be disruptive. I think he can still play in the run game, given the right scheme and support around him. I really like Ezeiruaku a lot.
Yeah, if he's going to play on rundowns, it's going to have to be in an odd front base scheme, right? But again, like in pass rush situations, this guy's the real deal. And it's like just watching his film, you go, wow, like there is a concise plan here. He is setting his moves up. He's so far ahead of the game in that aspect, and that's really going to carry him forward. And I think this is a guy that's just in the league for a long time because he can rush the passer and just flat out, right? So
agreed.
I'm a big fan of his. Number 4, out of Tennessee, James Pierce, 6'5", 243. For me, Pierce is really a one-trick pony right now. He's such a weird watch. Like, a lot of people say this too, and it's true. I don't think I've ever seen a player beat tackles so much and then not be able to sack quarterbacks. It's wild.
Yeah.
Like, the games I watched, you watch him just blow by tackles because he has an elite first step. It's up there with the top guys for sure. I don't think he has a good rush plan almost ever. I think he is truly a one-trick pony, and you see guys like this all the time. I do think he has a little bit better size than like a Joe Stewart or someone like that, and he's a lot better against the run. So, like, he's a disruptive edge. I just don't know how good of a pass rusher he's going to be at the next level because offensive tackles are so good in the NFL, right? And if you don't have, he literally has just a speed rush off the edge, just really basic. That's kind of what he has. And I think he's a guy that doesn't have a great natural feel as a rusher. I think he really gets by on his athleticism and his first step. He gets way too deep far often, and quarterbacks just easily step up. I don't think he got a ton of help at Tennessee with interior pressure at times, which did kind of lead to quarterbacks being able to do that. But and there's some off-field character concerns, right, about his maturity and stuff like that. So he really is an enigma. I don't know what to think about him completely. There are plays where you go, wow, this guy can be special. Then there's plays where you go, wow, can this guy do anything else but use a speed rush off the edge? Like, that's kind of all he has, right? So those are teachable things. I question his natural ability as a rusher, but we'll see if he can work on that. And I think because this guy's first step is so special, like it really is, I think he's going to go in the first round for sure, despite the character concerns, and teams are going to take a flyer on him.
Yeah, I think we're locked up with all that. Very much the athlete, if you just take a picture of where he is on the field at times, you would think that he would just be like this elite disruptor. If you like plotted, like they have the QB like plotting where his completions and incompletions were. If you plotted where he was at the end of every play, you would think, wow, this guy is an elite rusher. But he's not, like you said, right? He misses a lot of sacks, misses a lot of tackles, even in the run game. But the good thing about him is that he's going to be 21 on draft day. So there's still a lot of time for him to put it all together, get good coaching, and maybe we'll see him put it together. He's another guy that I see that you're drafting for projection of his ceiling rather than drafting an NFL ready player like Ezeiruaku might be.
Yeah, 100%. Like, this guy's a freak athlete. You saw it at the combine with the 40 and the hoodie, right? Like, this guy's an absolute freak. So all the physical tools are there. Can he kind of get the technical aspect down? Another thing to keep in mind, like, his production dropped at Tennessee after transferring, I believe, from Purdue. And I will say, to be fair to James, I think a lot of that was what they were asking him to do. Tennessee kind of did the Georgia thing a little bit, where like Pierce is playing as an off-ball backer in some fronts, and they're condensing the defensive line, so he's not getting to get after the passer. He certainly had the chance to do it quite a bit, but not as much as some of the other guys here. So that was probably the lack of production, as well as him not being able to finish when he had quarterbacks wrapped up in the backfield, right? I think he probably could have had 3 or 4 more sacks if he had done that, right? So you have to keep that in mind with him, to be fair to him. So we'll see if he can figure it out. I think he has all the tools. We'll see if he can get a definitive rush plan, and we'll see moving forward. But he's my number 4.
Yeah, just looking at, take the numbers game. I'm not usually a numbers guy, but I think it's fun to put into context. Like 99 percentile, obviously, with the 40 time, 94th with the 10-yard, wingspan 59. I mean, but then you see the elite explosiveness, 89th for the broad jump as well, and 110 QB pressures over his college career. Like, there's obviously something there. It's just it's just taking that hopefully moldable clay and making it into a piece of art.
Yep, it is. High risk, high reward with that guy for sure. Moving on to number 3. Shemar Stewart, out of Texas A&M, 6'6", was listed at 290. He has cut his weight down quite a bit and is now, I believe, at 260-ish. At the combine, I believe that's what he weighed in at.
I'm on it.
He's
267 is where he's listed right now.
Yeah, so he's lost quite a bit of weight, which I think is going to benefit him quite a bit. Again, we talked about the weird things A&M kind of asked these guys to do. This one thing he needs to work out of, which is really weird to talk about a college player with, he's awful out of a 3-point stance, right? Like, he stands straight up. He doesn't gain a lot of ground. He just kind of stands straight up and then attacks out of a 3-point. It does not look pretty. That's a big issue for him, but that's something you can easily work on, right? So I'm not really too concerned about that. But he really is a different player when he's standing up as compared to when he's in that 3-point, right? Out of the 3-point, you go, wow, this guy doesn't really have much for me. Out of the 2-point, he was playing at 290, and it looked like he was playing at 290. Some of the plays this guy made was just incredible. Really has the wow factor, right? So powerful, explosive out of that 2-point. His first step is really good. It's not like Pierce's or the next couple on the list here, right? But it's, for that size, pretty remarkable. You saw him just kind of take tackles into quarterbacks' laps. I know there's a lack of production in sacks there, but believe me, on tape, when you watch, he's affecting the quarterback for sure, right? Sacks aren't the be-all, end-all. I think if you looked at pressures and how he affected quarterbacks and made them step up into the pocket, he's doing his job at a very high level. A&M's interior rush was really not there a lot of the year, which I think kind of limited his production. I think if they had a good interior rush and were collapsing the pocket more, Shemar would have had probably 5 or 6 more sacks, if not more than that. Quarterbacks were pretty easily able to step up because there was just no penetration by that interior at all on passing downs. As I said, really good motor on rundowns. There was a lot of plays where a guy at 290 is pursuing to the ball on bubble and tunnel screens and blowing them up. And you're like, okay, like, I see a Shemar. That's pretty crazy at that size to be able to track receivers down in open space in the college game and do that. So there's a lot there. I thought when he had a rush plan, emphasis on when, because it wasn't very often, but when he did, he really showed the ability to beat tackles and set up some moves here and there. That needs to be more consistent, but that's a very coachable thing. I think this is a projection guy as well, but I think the floor is a lot higher rather than a guy like Mykel Williams.
Yeah, I think we're once again right lockstep with all this, and we talked about it. And I don't want to beat the dead horse over and over again, but I'm wondering what in the hell was Texas A&M asking him to do? And I wouldn't be surprised if he came to the combine with the lost weight because he recognized the kind of the same stuff that you were saying, right? Like, I want to play as an athletic rusher. And we saw with his testing, right? Like, he dropped his 20-ish pounds, we'll say 15-ish pounds.
Yeah.
And he tested elite. Like, we're talking Myles Garrett levels of, and, you know, tough to compare a guy to a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
But when we're looking in the top 90 percentile for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different measurables, that's pretty sick, right? So you're definitely taking him based off of those kind of traits and the potential that you see with him. I'm excited to see what he can do in the NFL, and I think he's going to be a top 10 pick for this reason. And this is one of the few, like we talk about a lot with QBs in the college game, of the scheme kind of elevating him. I think this is the opposite, where a scheme is holding him back. And I'm excited to see when we get an NFL team who picks him, fits what they want to do, and they see something special in him and can game plan around those kind of attributes, right? What he can do.
Yeah, and I think like on tape, being at 290, his player comp for me was like a mix of Cam Jordan and then like Jaguars Malik Jackson. And Malik Jackson, for the majority of his career, especially with Denver, really heavily played inside. But on rundowns, Malik would play at end in Jacksonville, and he'd really use his power to just absolutely dominate tackles. And he had good hand usage. And I saw a little bit of that with him. Just the way they kind of attacked the passer, it really reminded me of that. Shemar is a way better athlete than Malik was, right? Malik was all power. Shemar has a lot of like, he's way faster, obviously, a lot more explosive, but just the kind of the way they approached it really reminded me of that. I think that player comp for me is going to change right now that he's down to 267.
Yeah.
I think the way he's going to be able to attack at that weight and move is going to be very different. So that's probably going to end up being a terrible player comp on my part. But
but until we see the film, right, of what he does it this way, we can only go off of what we know, right? You only know what you know.
Yeah, exactly. But I think there's definitely something here with this guy, and I think the floor is a lot higher than these other guys. So that's why I have him there. Now, we'll get to the top two in a sec. Before we get to that, Jalen Walker is not on my list just because I think he's a true hybrid. I really do think he's mostly passing down edge player. And I think he's one of the best ones. If we're talking pure pass rush here, he's in my top 5, 100%. Because I think he's going to be an off-ball backer on rundowns. I think he's truly a hybrid guy, kind of that Micah Parsons-esque guy early in his career until he full-time made the switch. So that's why he's not here. Super high on him. I can see him drafted in the top 10, no problem. So I'm really high on him. I just don't think he's a pure edge, if you know what I mean. So, and I don't know if he'll ever be that guy because he's really solid playing off-ball linebacker, right? So I just don't know if he's a true edge. He's more of the hybrid guy, but if we're talking pass rush, he's there for sure. So number 2 for me, this is not going to be an overly popular decision. Let me explain before you scream at me through your computer or phone screen. Abdul Carter from Penn State.
But Nick, he's going to be a top 4 pick.
He is.
You're crazy.
I could see him going at number 1. He is more like, to me, he is a hybrid guy, right? Like, this is a guy that at the NFL level, I don't know. He will be able to play rundowns in a year or two. I just think he needs to build strength. He doesn't have a massive wingspan, and he's not that big of a guy, right? He's 6'3", 252, right? I think he's going to struggle in the run game a tiny bit against offensive tackles, because what's his wingspan? I don't think he even measured it at the
He
combine.
didn't measure. Neither of the sites I'm looking at have his wingspan. He only
Exactly.
timed his 40.
And you see that on tape. You really do. And he's a very strong player for his size. I just think at the NFL level, he's going to struggle on the edge on rundowns. Now, when we talk about him as a pass rusher, wow, this guy's incredible, right? Just the hip flexibility is second to none. He does win with speed quite a bit, but he just has such a natural ability to get to the passer. He also, if he has issues on the edge against the run, it doesn't matter because he can play off ball backer, just like Micah Parsons, right? It's the same thing, which is so weird that Penn State has two of these guys in like what, a 5-year span. Pretty wild, honestly. Such a unique skill set. I know it's becoming more prevalent in today's game, but the ability to play those both at such a high level is just pretty unprecedented, right? Really like this guy's game. He's a can't miss. I think he's a generational talent. I'd be shocked if he gets to even number 4. Like, I'd just be absolutely shocked. Explosive athlete, lateral agility is unreal, bend is crazy, everything blows you away about him. Elite first step, gets hands on tackles first. Like, he has a definite rush plan most of the time. Just a natural, great feel, ability to track ball carriers down from depth. You'll see him like chase plays down from the backside, and it looks like the running back's gone, and he gets there and makes it a 5-yard gain. You're like, wow, this guy is just insane. Like, you just don't see this very often. Couple of weaknesses for me in the run game. So this is where my worries come from. He has a tendency to kind of run around blocks rather than take them on head on, which created seams in the defense to run through. Like when he's taking on pullers and stuff of that nature, he tries to kind of run around and go make a play rather than take them on and actually have proper gap integrity. The wingspan, as we already mentioned, and he does have a slighter frame, right? So those are my only worries for him. I think worst case scenario, this guy's a perennial all pro player, pro bowler who plays off the ball on rundowns and then gets after it on passing downs and just makes quarterback's life misery. That's like the worst case scenario, I think, for this guy.
Worst
I
case
think,
is Pro Bowls.
yeah, again.
Yeah.
And then I think best case scenario is he gets a little bit stronger, maybe puts like 10 to 15 pounds on, and is able to take on tackles in the run game. I do still worry about the wingspan a little bit. It really shows up on film if you dive deep into it. But this guy's a can't miss. He's just, we'll talk about my number 1 guy. The number 1 guy does everything well. So that's the only thing.
Yeah, I'm as high on Carter as anybody. I'm hoping he can somehow make his way to 4 for my Patriots to get him. Doesn't look likely though.
Teams will regret that for a long time.
I know, but dare to dream, my friend. Dare to dream. No, he is that generational talent, and I love players like this that you can kind of move him around and build a defense around what you want him to do on any given formation or package or anything. He's just that kind of guy. And the fact that he only switched to edge in this last year, before he was playing off the ball with Penn State, he has time to develop, and I think his ceiling is through the friggin' roof, right? No, yeah. I completely agree with everything. I love Abdul Carter. I think he'll be a problem for decades to come.
Yeah, absolutely. The floor is so high. I think the floor is higher than a lot of these guys' ceilings, right? So, yeah. Just a can't miss guy, Abdul Carter. Really loved watching him. The other thing I'll mention, this guy kind of has different tape if you watch him at certain points of the season. Early on in the season, he makes a couple wild plays and then disappears for most of the game. During the college football playoff, though, and he was playing hurt for that matter, he had a shoulder problem, I believe. This guy was everywhere. So I don't know whether to chalk that down to just development, which is quite possible, or if you chalk it to only being engaged when the stage is at the biggest, right? So that's another thing for me. I don't think it's the latter. I think it's more the development thing, but that was just an interesting thing I thought of too. But again, can't miss player, going to be a perennial all-pro. This is the guy for me that just can't miss. Now we go to my number 1. He's moved up quite a bit since that Senior Bowl performance. Number 1, Mike Green out of Marshall, 6'4", 248. So I saw the clip of him where he just runs over the tackle and everyone's like, oh, this guy's unreal. And I was like, all right, it's a one-on-one drill. I don't really care. But I want to look at this guy. So I started watching the film of him. Wow, this guy is unbelievable. I was not very impressed by him bull rushing a tackle in a one-on-one drill. If you watch the film of this guy playing, he is incredible. Now, there are some off-field concerns, which are going to probably let him slide a little bit down this draft. We don't really know what's going on with that situation at this point. But as a player, this guy is insane. Like, there's just things that he does that you can't teach, right? Abdul Carter, his bend getting to the passer is incredible, right? Green's is on a different level. He literally looks like his knee is on the ground at some points, but he's still somewhat upright and just turns at these insane angles that I really haven't seen for a long time. Elite motor, way stronger than his frame would indicate. This guy is going to have no problem in the run game. His wingspan may be in the 8th percentile, but this guy is so good with his leverage, locks out on tackles. You saw it against Ohio State. He doesn't get moved in the run game. And with Marshall's scheme, too, there's a lot of times where he was forced to take on guards because they condensed their front. And he's taking on guards one-on-one and not getting moved. So this guy's so strong. He's going to be awesome against the run from day one for you. As a pass rusher, he's just as good as Carter. He has a great rush plan. Some of the finesse moves he has in his arsenal are incredible. Great spin, great usage of hands. He really can do it all. Just effortless speed to power bull rush. He uses the ghost rush. My player comp for him was Dwight Freeney. And if you just put this guy in a scheme where he just gets after it from the edge, he's going to be so disruptive for years to come.
Yeah, I really like Mike Green as well. I love his bend, as you were kind of saying, his knee almost being on the ground, but still being able to stay upright, honestly.
Yeah.
Just stay like in control of his body and be able to make those kind of plays. He's a big disruptor, whether both in the past game, which we obviously saw with 17 sacks, like that's crazy productive, and also in the run game. He just has a relentless motor, and he has sneaky strength. Like obviously everyone was like, oh my goodness gracious, he did the one-on-one drill. I was kind of skeptical about that because, yeah, same reason you kind of said. It's a one-on-one drill in a showcase. Like, who cares? But he did end up bench pressing in the 2nd percentile. So, I mean, he's definitely stronger than his frame would lead you to believe. And he tested very fast as well with his 40 time.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot to complain about. I guess the only things I would worry about is that he is still thin and wiry. Yes, he does have more strength. He has the bend, but he can get moved if offensive linemen do get inside of him. But one thing that Mike Vrabel kind of said this when defending Will Campbell is wingspan only matters if you know how to use it. And even though if you use it, right? Because we still see guys that can have all the arm length in the world, but if they still let guys in their chest, you're donezo, right?
Yeah.
So I think he knows he has a short wingspan, but he knows how to make up for it. And that's big, right? I really do like the stuff that he puts on tape and his production. I still think it's a shocker. It's a hot take that he's your number one edge rusher.
Yeah.
But with the reasons you've said and the things you can back it up with on film, I get it. I absolutely get it.
Yeah. As a pure edge, right? Don't get me wrong. I think Abdul Carter is the better overall player, 100%. Like, there's no debating that in my mind, right? But as a pure edge, because Green is going to be good against the run from day one, and he can rush the passer probably just as well as Carter, that's why he's the number one edge for me. Not defensive player. Defensive player is Carter. I'm not an idiot. I can see that, right? It's just, as an edge player, I think he's better overall. So there's some nuance to it, right? And you spoke about the 17 and a half sacks. Yeah, he's at Marshall. He's not really playing high quality of competition. If you turn on the tape against Ohio State, he's clearly the best player on the field. Like, just clearly, right? They're struggling to block him. They're running away from him. He's not getting a lot of help from his teammates, right? As you would probably expect. It's a different echelon of competition. Those are the national champions you're playing, right? So it's going to be different, but he's clearly the best player on the field on defense. It's pretty clear.
I'm not always the biggest proponent of, the competition he played. You can only play against the guys they put in front of you. And if you don't bark as a puppy, you're not going to bark as a dog. And he is absolutely cliches. He's absolutely ripping it up as a puppy. So I'm excited to see what he does as a dog.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you talked about the 17.5 sacks. In Marshall's scheme, like they're not just letting him tee off all the time, like I was saying, right? He's playing inside over guards sometimes when they're condensing the front on rundowns. He's playing inside of tight ends quite a bit, almost all the time from what I saw. So he's getting chipped and doubled a lot, and he still has that production, despite it not being a very strong conference, obviously. But just because of that in and out of itself, that's so impressive to me. Just the way they were utilizing him or asking him to play, that's crazy to me. So this guy is a can't miss. I think he's generational. The next Dwight Freeney, perhaps. That's what I see in him. So anything to add, Dave?
Nope. I think we got it. I think Jack Sawyer ranks number 4 on my list. If anyone was asking, he deserves to be up there. But we covered that already. No, I think we got it.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Film Grinders podcast. Tell us what you think. Disagree. Agree. I feel like a lot of people are going to disagree with my number 1 take.
Tell Nick why Jack Sawyer belongs on this list in the comments below. I'll die on this hill. All
right. Well, let us know, guys. Again, thank you for tuning in. Like, subscribe. It'll help us out a lot. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in. See ya. Thank you for listening to the Film Grinders podcast. Make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. From me and the guys, thank you. We'll see you next time.